What happens now when you decide that you want to, let's say, move away from an EV? What happens if you decide you want to trade out of your EV or sell it? What does that market look like right now? Well, I decided to do a quick experiment. And boy, my eyes was open really, really wide. So talking about the EV ownership experience, right off the back, I can tell you I've enjoyed driving my ID4. I've enjoyed driving all the test cars I've driven so far. And I know my channel is going to be focused primarily on EVs, but I am going to still start, reviewing other cars as well, especially if they have siblings, such as like the Kona, for instance. With that being said, I wanted to talk about what happens when you do one or two things. A, you buy your EV or you lease your EV, and you decide you want to upgrade. And let's say you decide to do it earlier than if you waited for your whole term. This is more of an issue for a lease owner than it is of someone who's purchasing it. You're still going to have the same kind of scenario that I had. But I want to do a quick experience. So experiment, I should say. So I decided to look at two different cars. One was the Hyundai Ioniq 6 and the Ioniq 5, kind of as a cross. And then the other was looking at the Mustang Mach-E. Now, I decided to do a couple local dealers, and I know this could be different in every area because some areas of the country, they have more of an overstock, so dealers are willing to do way more crazy deals. But in my area, it just made sense for me to try to do locally, because I have some good relationships with a lot of these dealers. Now, what I'm going to say in the next few minutes has nothing to do with the dealership groups at all. This is just the market in general. So when I went to get my car appraised at not one, but two different dealerships, I was given roughly the same similar pricing point. And I'm going to tell you one reason why toward the end that I was actually kind of told, and I kind of understand it, but at the same time, you wasn't prepared for it. So if you just happen to go look up on Kelley Blue Book your car, right? And I'm going to throw what my car value is, but Kelley Blue Book says as of right now with the miles that I have on my car, there's not a thing wrong with it, no damage whatsoever. And so you see Kelley Blue Book's pricing, and they're valuing it where they're at. Well, when you go to a different lot, and let's say that dealership is not part of a dealership group, right? And they're individual Hyundai dealership or Ford dealership or Volkswagen dealership. What happens is when they go to review your car and they start looking at it to kind of figure out what your car is worth, they're going to go by what the market says. And then they're going to kind of go back off of it a little bit, because here's what happens. They don't want to get stuck with another EV on their lot when they're trying to get rid of their own EVs. And I understand that, especially when they don't have a Volkswagen dealership group in their actual portfolio. So a couple of the dealerships are independents, whereas the others are part of a larger group. But the larger group, unfortunately, didn't have any Volkswagen dealerships in the area, so they basically wasn't going to appraise it for more than what it's worth in that aspect. Because what normally happens is they have to either resell it on their lot or send it to the auction. And right now, the auction prices, of course, for EVs is pretty much at the bottom tier of what you might see on like Kelley Blue Book. And in some cases, even lower than that. And what they're trying to do, like I said, I get dealerships want to make money. So they're going to basically lowball you even beyond that lower figure from Kelley Blue Book. So in this scenario, it was about $3,000 less is what they quoted me for my car. So it came as a shock, but I understood once, management kind of told me what they were looking at. But here's what I don't want you to start doing. If you're a leasee, you don't want to put yourself in a boat where you're trying to move out a car a little bit too early, and you basically turn around and you put more negative equity on your new car, which puts you more in a hole. Most EV owners that bought their cars probably, let's say 21 to 22, are coming to the end of their leases now. So what that means is they're going to be in a better situation than what we are before. but they're going to get a sticker shock when they go in if they're trying to trade out of the lease, because that is one of your options, of course, is trading out versus turning in the lease. The only reason why you would really want to turn in the lease is if you're under miles or your miles are within a certain range, or if you decide that you're going to rebuy another car from the same manufacturer. So like if I decide to get another ID4 in 2025, then what most of the time the manufacturer would do is they will basically, they'll pay off the last couple payments of my lease, and any overage miles, they would just kind of just wash their hands of it because I'm actually buying a car from them. That's the norm. I don't know what it's going to look like in 2025, but in 2024, that's still kind of the case if your lease is coming to an end from a 2021 purchase. Now, if you're like myself, where you just got your lease, in 2023, and it's a 2023 model, you decide to, get out of the car early because you want to upgrade the car for whatever reason, that's when the sticker shock hits you the most, because you're going to take a huge amount of depreciation in that first year. And to be honest, you're taking a huge amount of depreciation even in the second and third year. It's just that it just piles up. The one spot where this hurts the most is for those buyers who bought an EV between late 2022 and early 2023, when we had these ridiculous markups. That is where you are going to see an astronomical negative equity situation. So my advice to you is not to jump into anything very rash. Take your time to purchase the car that you want, get the features in the car that you want, and then from that point, now you're at a better position to where you could, feel more comfortable if you have to keep that lease a little bit longer and you're not going to be stuck. Now, the only reason why I was considering getting out of my lease is because I love the ID4 that I have, but I have an ID4S, and that model does not have a very good long range battery. Now, for me riding around town, which is about 85% of my commute, no big deal. I can make it work all day, every day, and typically I only charge the car once a week. But when I do decide to want to take it on a trip, which I have taken this to Florida, it's just a little bit annoying because you have to make 1 to 2 extra stops while you're driving. And that was one of the big things that I wanted. Plus, I wanted faster charging speeds. I can get up to 150 kilowatts on this charge, but that's at the lowest end, right? We're talking about charging at about 5%, or under 10% to get to that 150 kilowatt spot. Once it gets to 10% or to about 15%, it drops down to about 140, holds the 140 to about 20%. And then from there, it starts to dissipate down to around 80 kilowatts, all the way up to about 60 to 70%. So it's not crazy slow, but it's not the greatest, right? The charging curve needs to be about 100 kilowatts from, let's say, 50% to 80%. That will make it so much more usable and a lot better to charge. And then it's a little bit better to take on the road. So that was my 2 reasons for doing it. And I just want to explain something about, the EV ownership that you may not be thinking about when you do decide to purchase an EV. If you decide to go from an EV back to a gas car, then it gets a little bit more difficult, because one thing about going from one EV to another EV, you do have the ability to still take on the additional incentives, right? So you have a $7,500 tax credit that's either being rebranded as a lease credit for manufacturers that don't offer it because they don't manufacture the vehicles in the U.S. to match the requirements. So you can still leasing it $7,500 off, but there are a few cars, of course, you can still qualify for the $7,500, straight up tax credit if you decide to buy it. So you have that, right? There's also the other incentives depending on the states. So those kind of can help offset some of that negative equity that you're running into, but it still puts you in a position to, I guarantee you, most people that have an EV that maybe, trying to get out of their cars a little bit earlier, they're probably sitting in a neighborhood of about $5,000 to $10,000 of negative equity just right there off the bat. And that's if you put any money down when you decide to do your lease, which, everybody's situation is going to be different. Now, if you decide to buy another gas car because you're like, hey, I tried the EV experiment, it's not for me, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. But there are a few brands that you might can look at, and I'm pretty sure these brands will actually love your business. That will be the Stellantis group. That's a Jeep, Dodge, and Chrysler. And there's also Nissan. Those are the 4 brands I know that they're really struggling kind of to resell their cars. Other brands like Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, those guys they're doing pretty good, right? Ford, even though Ford, if you want an F-150, they'll make a crazy deal on those, but you're still going to have some issues of getting the right deal. So take your time, research as much as possible. Use places like Car Guru and Car Edge and a couple of others out there to kind of help you research the prices off of the dealer's website. So what you do is when you go in, you use that price that's on their website, and you say, hey, this is what you're advertising for, and you work off of that advertised price. Do not bend, do not buckle. Just make sure you look at the small fine print, that it's not showing you any incentives as part of that pricing. So if they say it's a dealer discount of $2,500 off, then you know $2,500 is a discount that the dealership is going to give you before incentives. Don't let them try to work that in and say, no, it's incentives as well, especially if it's on their fine print on their website. Always use that to your benefit. Take time to study and find the right information before you decide to go make any kind of deals at a car dealership when you're looking at purchasing, because I can tell you right now, that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they don't take the time to research the car that they want, look at the pricing that is around in the area, and then go beyond that area, at least by 100 miles, and just see what other dealerships are offering similar cars for at that price point or that particular model, because I can tell you there's a lot of times you're losing money and there might be a better dealership willing to make a better deal out there. So that's it for me today. Just want to talk about EV ownership and what to expect when you decide to trade out or trade away.